Hello, everybody. Bob Oxley here. It's time for tips, topics, issues, and positions. And today we're going to be talking about Proposition 2 with the upcoming midterm election here in Utah. And it has to do with medical marijuana. So our topic is marijuana, and the issue is should Proposition 2 pass or not pass, or get some input. And I've got two experts here. They're going to help me out. I've got Professor Joe Green, that I'm sure that our listeners and viewers are familiar with. He's been here a number of times, and from our History and Political Science Department. And also another returnee is Professor Matt Smith-Larman, who is the coordinator for the Applied Sociology program here at Dixie State University. So welcome, gentlemen.
Nice to be here, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Great taking out of your busy schedules, coming to visit us here at the studio at KDXI. And this particular proposal, number 2, there's 4 proposals on the upcoming midterm election on Tuesday next week. But according to Hinckley and the Salt Lake City Tribune, of the 4 proposals, this proposal number 2 is running about 69% in interest as compared to between 13 and 15% on the other 3 proposals. So there's a lot of interest statewide on this one, whether or not medical marijuana should be legalized here in the state of Utah. So as what I want to do is just open it up a little bit. I want you guys just to give me an idea. When we're talking about recreational marijuana as opposed to medical marijuana, what is the distinction? I know that we have our friends to the north in Canada have just adopted recreational marijuana for the entire country, but Utah has been taking a careful approach to this, and they're really trying to analyze medical marijuana. What is the difference between the two?
Recreational marijuana is so even closer than Canada, Bob, is Nevada. Did they say instead of A? Maybe.
Maybe.
And in Nevada, California, Colorado, I don't know how many states there are now. Recreational means, for the most part, same laws as alcohol laws. If you're 21 or over, you can purchase it, you can consume it, and there are laws like don't use it in public and no smoking laws and such. But and it's not sold at liquor stores; they have dispensaries.
Okay.
Medical marijuana means you have to have a recommendation from a doctor.
Okay, a prescription.
But no, a prescription. They're not allowed to give a prescription. They have to give a recommendation.
Oh,
because a prescription has to do with laws, federal laws.
Wow.
Yeah, a doctor can't prescribe marijuana because then the pharmacy would be in violation of federal law if they distributed it. So what you would get in this is a card. The doctor would give you a card that authorizes you to purchase it at a dispensary or grow your own. In this proposal would allow some people to grow their own if they're not within 100 miles of a dispensary.
Okay.
So it's important to note here, Bob, that what we're talking about is on the federal level, marijuana is categorized as a Class 2 narcotic, I believe it is, Joe, right? And it's the same.
Is it 2 or 1? I think it's still Schedule 1.
Schedule 1.
Yeah.
And
okay.
that means they have defined it as having no medical benefit whatsoever. So there's no reason on the federal level that you would use it. It's right there with heroin and a few other
That's interesting
drugs.
Because I'm looking at, let's give you a little bit of the verbiage that we've got here on Proposal 2 that we're trying to consider. It said, Proposal 2, shall a law be enacted to establish a state-controlled process that allows persons with certain illnesses to acquire and use medical cannabis and, in certain limited circumstances, to grow up to 6 cannabis plants for personal medical use. And the second part of this is authorize the establishment of facilities that grow, process, test, or sell medical cannabis and require those facilities to be licensed by the state, and establish state controls on those licensed facilities, including electronic systems that track cannabis inventory and purchases, requirements and limitations on the packaging and advertising of cannabis, and on the types of products allowed. Well, just based on the proposal, on that sector of this proposal, it sounds to me like the state is wording this in such a manner whereby there's nothing to fear if this truly does work and help out people that maybe have a situation with opioids in the opioid crisis. Will this help out? Do you think this will help out if this is adopted? Because the way it reads is the state of Utah is really going to be in control, overseeing all these operations and inventory. And so should the general public be concerned about passing this proposal, or do you think that maybe with these controls that people that need the use of cannabis for medical purposes would benefit from this, and maybe we'll see a decline in opioids? Now, I threw a whole bunch of stuff at you, so you can play with this, and I'd love some responses.
We're getting away from from the objective part of this to the subjective part. What do Matt and I think about this? My view is the government should stay out of my life, and that I should be able to do pretty much what I want, as long as I don't engage in force and fraud against any other person or group. So if someone thinks that their health can be enhanced using marijuana, there's lots of debate about the efficacy of it for various kinds of diseases and things. Okay, but if it seems to me that should be up to the person. It's my, if I've got an illness or a disease and I think something helps, I ought to be able to use it. So I would vote for the proposal, but that's my perspective on it. Were you?
From the objective perspective, Bob.
Yes.
The question you posed was, should people be concerned? And the way I took your question was, should they be concerned if they're following the law? And technically, no, because it's still against the law on a federal level. And at any moment, the federal government could come in and arrest a person for possessing marijuana, even if it's recommended by a doctor, whether it's Nevada or Utah. Now, they haven't been doing that since the George Bush years. Starting with Obama, the federal government has said, we'll leave it up to the states, and President Trump seems to be doing that at the moment as well, although Attorney General Sessions would like to go after it, but Trump has kept him from doing that. I don't know. I guess Trump can't keep him from doing that, can he, Joe? But
yeah, once he takes the oath of office to uphold the Constitution, he gets to pretty much make those decisions himself.
So the federal government could, if they wanted. They did under George Bush when the first in California and Nevada and Colorado and a few other places first legalized medical marijuana. The federal government would come in and raid dispensaries at times and arrest people under federal law. So I don't think, personally, that you probably shouldn't worry. You wouldn't worry about it. I don't think the federal government, if it passes, is going to come after anybody, but the possibility exists.
Yeah. The other part of my question was, do you think medical marijuana, based on some preliminary research that's been done, is better than some of the opioids that are available from the pharmaceuticals? In other words, what we're seeing all sorts of research saying it's beneficial. It helps with the level of pain. It decreases that. There's a lot of positive spin on that, or is it really just positive spin, or is there some reality to this?
I think that should be left up to the doctor and the patient. I mean, if the doctor and the patient feel that marijuana might help, and there are studies that suggest for pain, for nausea, for a few other things that marijuana is a mild compared to a lot of other things, especially opioids. Right? There are studies that show that states with legal medical marijuana have lower rates of opioid overdoses. So marijuana as a pain reliever seems, if you let me use the word, seems healthier than opioids might be.
And from a natural source instead of a pharmaceutical.
It's just a plant.
It's just a plant.
It's the rate of overdose deaths from heroin went down when states adopted medical marijuana laws.
Wow.
It was higher before, lower after.
So there's some positive spins right there.
33%, is that the number?
Wow.
I think that's what we saw this morning, yeah.
Wow. That's very impressive. Very impressive. So, for our viewers, even though some viewers have indicated, or listeners have indicated to me that, but it's still a federal offense, they shouldn't have that fear, at least currently, because it's on a state ballot, and we're leaving it up to the states in our state of Utah. If they vote in favor of Proposition 2, Proposal 2, that should move forward without any interference from the federal government.
The federal government hasn't shown any interest in about 10 years or so of going after state marijuana laws.
Okay.
In Colorado, when the federal government would come in and arrest people for growing or possession, you have to use a jury of one's peers in order. So in federal court, you'd have to get a Denver jury. And Denver juries wouldn't convict people for marijuana use. So federal law became unenforceable in many parts of Colorado because the jury it's called jury nullification. The jury wouldn't convict people. I don't know if that is the case in Washington, the other first state to have a recreational marijuana law, or any of the others. I just know that about Colorado.
Okay. They in this proposal, they have what's the initial fiscal impact estimate, and what it says: the governor's office of management and budget estimates the law proposed by this initiative would result in a total fiscal expense of $2.9 million, of which $1.8 million is ongoing and $1.1 million would be a one-time expense on the front end. Boy, taxpayers are looking at this. Is this going to have a detrimental effect, do you think, long-term? In other words, if this proposition is adopted for medical marijuana, do you possibly see that we may evolve into recreational marijuana, having that on the ballot, having a ballot initiative on that? Because of people saying this stuff's really working, and we're seeing a decrease in some of the hard drugs and some of the opioids, and people are having a favorable input. Can you possibly see that in the future?
Boy, I grew up in Utah, Bob. I'm amazed that this is on the ballot at all, because and so my own projection would be that that's probably not going to happen, but I got the 2016 election really wrong, so I'm not a very good prognosticator of this kind of stuff. Maybe things are changing, but I don't think if this were to pass, I don't think it's going to. If it were to pass, then it would be years, decades, I think, before Utah would go for recreation, any kind of recreational thing. There would have to be all kinds of studies showing no harmful effects, no increase of use among kids, that kind of thing, before the voters of Utah would change. Although the Utah population is changing, lots of people are moving into the state because it's the fastest growing state economically right now, and so the mix of the population and the values of the population are gradually changing. Who knows what might happen? Matt probably has a better feel for this than I do.
No, I think eventually, I think the movement of the country as a whole, not just the country, you know, as you mentioned, Canada, countries culturally similar to us, the movement has been towards legalizing recreational marijuana. And so I think eventually in Utah, recreational marijuana will probably be legal. Now, how long? It could be decades. I mean, we are, as a conservative state, especially when it comes to drugs, we're behind the curve of much of the rest of the country, for better or for worse. I don't know if it's for better or for worse or not. I have not heard any. Now, I don't have data at my fingertips, but I haven't heard any horror stories of the states that have legalized it. I've heard that it's a revenue generator. Again, I don't have the data at my fingertips. Maybe I should have done my research.
No, that's fine.
But I think eventually, probably. recreational marijuana. It just seems to be the path. We're in a generation now, a couple generations removed from marijuana being made illegal by the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, and for quite a while, for a certain generation of people, marijuana, they thought it was just a horrible, horrible thing. We moved through the 20th century and the 60s and the hippies and all that, and we now to a generation that's making laws that they've seen if people that smoke marijuana, maybe even smoked it themselves, and they're coming to the realization that marijuana is no worse than many of the things that we have legal already, and it might even be worse. Jail might be worse than marijuana. So somebody who gets busted for marijuana, being busted might be worse for them than the marijuana itself. And so, I think there's a mind change, a cultural mind change that's happening pretty quickly.
It really is, because I like Joe Green has indicated, I'm kind of shocked that this proposal even made it. This proposal's on the ballot for even a consideration.
And it doesn't have to be changed necessarily through the ballot. There's been a couple places where legislatures have made it legal.
I doubt that's going to happen in Utah.
It's a possibility.
Being a true native of this state.
Yes. Yeah. But maybe I don't read the state as it is now, but I just don't see the legislature doing that.
But on the bottom of this proposal, I'm looking at the bottom, it said, in addition, the cost of posting information regarding the initiative in Utah's statewide newspapers and for printing for the additional pages in the voter information packet is estimated at $30,000 in one-time funds. And then we've read through the entire proposal. So based on the way this proposal is written, can you see a bias in the way that it's written? Is it bias in favor of or a bias against? I know you've given your opinions, but when you said that you think that this proposal possibly or probably would go down, why? Knowing in Utah, why would it go down? Because if it's dedicated to medical marijuana to help out people, like, for instance, even Parkinson's disease, they saw a lot of positive research, and it would be a positive as far as possibly lowering the opioid crisis and with a natural plant. And also both of you have mentioned about hard drugs, and we see declines based on some research that's done in other states. So, but Professor Green, you said you don't think this would pass. Is there a reason why?
Yeah, Utah has extremely strict, and for all of my colleagues who've come onto this campus over the years from other places, strange alcohol laws because of the way that the dominant culture in Utah, the LDS culture, views these kinds of substances. Okay, I think the church has come out against the initiative that we're discussing today. And in my experience, I've been here for 60-some years, okay, and I spent my life in this state. That's the determining factor for whether various kinds of legislation is accepted or adopted or even popular. And again, I don't see how you escape that characteristic of the state. So
you're equating the restrictive alcohol laws that are in effect with the cannabis would be the same thing. It would be a foreign substance.
Yeah, I think the legislature in Utah believes that it's protecting the people from harmful substances, protecting children from harmful substances, protecting people from being exposed to drunk drivers or high drivers and so on. It's a paternalistic attitude that the state tends to take about these kinds of moral issues, and at least it always has while I've lived here. And I would be really, really surprised if that has changed.
Okay.
So all that interest you said earlier in the show, Bob, when you said that this proposition has
69%
interest. The next question is, well, why are people interested? Is the interest from people that want to pass the proposition, or is there a high interest from people
That's why
that
I'm
want
asking
it to fail?
Yeah, that's my curiosity. That's why I posed the question to both of you. I just was amazed that looking at all four proposals, just interest in the proposal. And this proposal number 2, the proposition number 2, is at 69%, and the other three are at between 13 and 15%. I thought, what does that mean? Does that mean people are coming out to vote just because of this proposal, regardless of the candidates that are running? Is it drawing that much attention? And the other thing that I want to, you mentioned this before, is because we are the fastest growing, and one of at least St. George is the fastest growing city according to the Census Bureau that just was released, city, in the influx of those people that outside of the church, okay, bringing their values and their beliefs into our community and into the state. Could that have a bearing in the future concerning maybe the vote that's taking place today, or could it be total recreational marijuana in the near future as a result of the increase of the diversified populations entering Utah?
We'd have to get the sociologists on our campus to do a longitudinal study of the kind of people who are coming. I know when we went through a growth spurt in the 90s, before the 2008 downturn that shut down the growth in Utah for a while, that many of the people coming here were fleeing what they believed were bad influences, evil influences on them as they tried to raise their kids, and they're trying to get to some place that was safe. So a lot of the influx in that period,
or it was just some place that had jobs.
Yeah. Oh no, I this is anecdotal. I talk to lots of people. Yes. I can't raise my kids in this part of the country or that part of the country as effectively as I'm going to be able to raise them in Utah, where it's safe. Okay. Now the growth in this century in Salt Lake is fueled by the technology revolution that's going on up there. Salt Lake and Orem are a little tech hub that are growing. St. George is growing because it has such nice weather. Just go outside right now and you'll see why. Initially, St. George grew, the attraction was there's air conditioning, there's golf courses, and there's a temple in St. George. Okay, it was mostly retiring Mormons, but I think if you went out to Sun River, you'd find lots of people from far afield from just Utah. I think you'd find people from Michigan or Indiana or Illinois.
There's a lot of Midwest, a lot of influx from California,
and they may not share all of the conservative values that the state that I grew up in had become famous for. So
there's also, I think there are jobs here that people are moving for. There's service level jobs all over, saying construction and hotel and restaurant jobs. People move here for those as well.
Yeah, and the construction's just going bonkers here.
Still going bonkers.
We have a thing called desert color. Thousands of homes planned between exit 2 off of 15 all the way to the new airport, all going to be built up.
So the question is whether the people moving here, right, are they a diverse group of people or not? Diverse meaning compared to the dominant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints population that is traditionally here.
Yes.
More important question for a thing like this, though, or idea is, just because your population is diversifying doesn't mean the political power structure is diversifying.
Okay.
Right. So your city council and your mayor and the business leaders, they could, even if the everyday Joe is diversifying in our community.
That would be me.
It's still a very conservative power structure in Washington County.
Good point.
Yeah, and the state.
And the state as a whole.
Yeah.
So and with that conservative base that is there, they're not going to relinquish that. They're going to retain that power.
The state is still 60% LDS. It was 70% when I came to Dixie, and so it's a 10% change. But that's still the majority in most counties, in most cities. Salt Lake's the exception. Is LDS.
Oh.
However,
Go ahead.
I lost my thought because somebody told me there's 3 minutes or something.
Well, I got less.
I lost
than
my
that.
thought.
That's my technician with the call sign here. So,
you go ahead, and if I remember my thought, I'll bring it back.
all right. So here we go.
Here's my thought.
Go
I
ahead.
remember my thought.
All right.
From my experience, Bob, marijuana doesn't know political boundaries, though. I think Republicans smoke it just as much as Democrats, conservatives. So that I don't know if that's going to influence the vote. I agree with Joe. I don't think it's going to pass. I think it's going to. This is just a hypothesis. It's going to lose by quite a large margin, is what I think. But that, irrespective of whether people use it or not.
Listen, I did get the high sign, so my time is up. But I want to thank Dr. Smith-Larman and Dr. Green for being here and giving their opinions again. You're back in our studio from their busy schedule, and we took a look at proposition number 2. To the voters out there, you have an opportunity to vote either in favor of medical marijuana or against medical marijuana for the state of Utah. That's going to be on Tuesday. So the key is, no matter what, you have to get out and vote. Your vote does count. So I want to thank both of you for being here. Okay, this is Bob Oxley on behalf of my 2 guests. If you want to hear us, we're going to be on KDXI 100.3 at 3 p.m. on Friday, and again rebroadcasted at 4:30 on Saturday. And also, if you want to take a look at the 2 handsome gentlemen that came in as our guest speakers today, that's Dr. Smith-Larman. You can take a look at us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, or on our podcast affiliate, Podbean. And until next week, I want to thank you and have a great day. And remember to vote. Goodbye now.